This isn't a fairy tale, nor does it begin with a grand romance. It starts instead with a vibrant crimson tumbler, a fleeting glimpse in a polished hallway mirror, and a peal of laughter that felt utterly alien. The bass from the speakers thrummed through the floorboards, and the air was thick with the cloying sweetness of spiked fruit punch and the acrid tang of an overheated curling iron. What if the one moment you dread most arrives when you least expect it? I, Leander Evans, a man of 32 with slightly disheveled brown hair and hazel eyes that often miss the obvious, shouldn't have been there. Not yet, anyway. But I'd slipped away from my architecture firm early, hoping to surprise Briar, my wife of 3 years. I believe that's what couples deeply in love did. She mentioned a low-key gathering, just a few post-war drinks with colleagues. Nothing extravagant. I hadn't been invited. I told myself there was no reason to feel a flicker of jealousy. And I managed to convince myself of that, right up until the second I saw her. No, let me rephrase that. Until I witnessed her unguarded expression, the one she wore when she believed my gaze was elsewhere. I was still lingering near the main entrance of the sprawling, meticulously curated loft apartment that seemed far too pristine for the boisterous crowd filling it. That's when my eyes caught her reflection in the long hallway mirror. Briar, a striking blonde, 30 years old, with delicate features usually softened by a polite smile, was lost in a fit of unrestrained mirth. It wasn't her usual polite chuckle, nor the he's just a friend laugh. This was the raw, uninhibited kind that sent a sickening twist through my stomach. Beside her, a man I'd never seen before. His arms were sculpted, his shirt casually unbuttoned just enough to hint at his physique, and an almost palpable confidence exuded from him. His hand rested lightly on her waist. She made no move to dislodge it. Then she leaned in, murmuring something into his ear. He laughed, a deep, resonant sound. She drew even closer, their faces almost touching. I stood frozen, unable to even blink. Could one stolen glance unravel an entire life built on trust? I simply turned on my heel, walked silently out the door, and drove home. No dramatic scene, no raised voice, no furious texts. By the following morning, Briar, looking like a ghost in her elegant silk pajamas, sat trembling at our kitchen table, mascara streaking halfway down her pale cheeks. She pleaded with me to speak, but the truth was I still hadn't found the words. She truly was a specter at that polished oak table. Her normally vibrant blue eyes were bloodshot, not from a sleepless night, but from the kind of wrenching sobs you unleash when the full, horrifying weight of an irreversible mistake finally hits you. Her slender hands were clasped around a forgotten ceramic mug, the steam long since dissipated. Her knee bounced rhythmically beneath the table, a restless energy trapped by a suffocating blanket of guilt. I entered the kitchen without a sound. I poured myself a glass of filtered water, leaning against the cool granite countertop by the sink. I wasn't trying to intimidate her. Honestly, the emotional well was completely dry. I just wanted to hear what she would say first, knowing that her initial utterance would lay the groundwork for everything that was to follow. I didn't mean for you to see that, she whispered, her gaze fixed on the empty mug. Wrong answer. Not. It's not what you think. Not. Let me explain. Not even. I made a terrible mistake. Just, I didn't mean for you to see it. I turned, intending to walk out of the kitchen, ready to learn the shocking truth about what she really said. Leander, please. Her voice was a desperate plea as she rose, so abruptly her chair scraped loudly across the tile. It wasn't what it looked like. I was just drinking. He kissed me first. I didn't kiss him back. I swear. I actually laughed. A hollow, bitter sound. I laughed because even from across the room, I knew she was lying. I saw the way you touched him, I said quietly, my back still to her, facing the empty hallway. You touched him like you'd utterly forgotten I existed. Silence descended. She didn't deny it. And in that heavy quiet, she made her next catastrophic error. It didn't mean anything. I needed to feel something. You've been so distant lately, like you don't even care about us. The classic narrative flip. Suddenly, I was the architect of her hallway indiscretion. Oh, so you were lonely? I asked, finally turning to face her. That's your grand excuse? That I failed to make you feel alive, so you leaned into a man you supposedly just met? He's not just someone I met, she blurted out, her hand flying to her mouth a split second too late. I simply stared at her, slowly, quietly, feeling the gears of my mind click into a chilling alignment. Not just someone she met. Not a stranger at all. How long? I asked, my voice devoid of all emotion. How long have you been seeing him? I wasn't seeing him. How long? Her eyes welled with tears again. Real ones this time. Unpracticed. Unrehearsed. And then she spoke the words that would carve an irreparable chasm between us. 3 months. 3 months. 90 days of calculated deception. Of goodnight kisses laced with unspoken guilt. Of hushed texts she hid. Of frantic phone calls taken behind locked bathroom doors. Of last-minute errands that stretched for hours. I felt as if someone had surgically opened my chest cavity and poured cold, setting concrete into my lungs. She continued talking, a garbled torrent about how it meant nothing, how she thought we were drifting, how she didn't know how to fix us, so she sought distraction. Her words blurred, indistinct as static on a dead radio channel. But one phrase sliced through the fog with brutal clarity. I ended it with him last week. I blinked. Little did I know, the real deception had only just begun. Oh, so last night was what? A farewell party. That's when the sobs truly erupted. She reached for my hand, but I instinctively stepped back. Not from anger, but from a primal, self-preservatory urge. In that precise moment, I realized I no longer recognized the woman standing before me. I didn't hate her. I harbored no desire for revenge. But one truth resonated with absolute certainty. I couldn't be the man who simply got over this. The hours following her confession blurred into some of the strangest of my life. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even feel heartbroken in the conventional sense. It was more akin to being submerged underwater, the immense weight of her words pressing down on my chest, making each breath a struggle, yet not quite enough to drown me. I drifted through the house in a daze, my fingers tracing objects that once felt imbued with us. The framed photograph from our second anniversary trip to Savannah. The familiar ceramic mug we both instinctively reached for each morning. The whimsical note she'd once tucked into my sock drawer, proclaiming, "You make life soft." None of it felt real anymore. They were simply props from a stage set that had already been dismantled. Around noon, I told her I needed space. I didn't pack a bag, didn't slam the door. I simply left. I climbed into my car, a quiet hum filling the cabin, and started driving without any particular destination in mind. I eventually found myself outside a quaint coffee shop we used to frequent when we were just dating, back before weekend brunch became a passive-aggressive battleground of strained silences. I took a corner table and stared at the exposed brick wall for a solid hour, my untouched latte growing cold beside me. Then, on a sudden impulse, I did something I genuinely never thought I'd do. I called Jasper. Jasper Harding, my cousin, more of a brother, really. He was the only person who'd always possessed an uncanny ability to tell when I was faking being fine. We hadn't spoken in months, not for any particular reason, just life's relentless current pulling us in different directions. When he picked up, his voice was warm and familiar. "Hey, man," he said, as if nothing had ever changed between us. And that's when I completely broke. I told him everything, every excruciating detail, the loft party, the mirror, the hallway, Briar's tearful confession. When I reached the part where she claimed she'd ended things with the other man a week prior, Jasper went utterly silent. If you knew Jasper, that silence alone would have set off blaring alarm bells. "What?" I asked, my voice tight. "Just say it." He exhaled slowly. "Leander, I'm really sorry, man." But she didn't end it. What if the person you trust most holds a secret that shatters your world? My stomach twisted into a knot. "What are you talking about?" He paused again, clearly wrestling with whether to divulge something he knew he shouldn't. And then he did. One of my buddies, Nate, he handles security at that loft. The one where the party was. He runs cameras for private events. He called me this morning. "Didn't realize it was your wife." He just said, "Hey, I think I saw someone your cousin knows acting real close with a guy who isn't her husband." Said she left with him. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, the room spinning. "She left with him." I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, alien to my own ears. "Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything until I knew more. But now that you've told me everything." I ended the call, my gaze fixed on the rain-streaked windshield. The image of Briar sitting at our kitchen table this morning, crying, begging, claiming it was over, contorted into something grotesque. She had lied again. Not even 12 hours after her I ended its speech, she'd walked out of that party hand in hand with him. I drove back home, my mind a seething volcano beneath a deceptively calm surface. She was in the living room, a soft blanket draped over her lap, pretending to watch some baking show we once enjoyed together. I stood in the doorway. "You left with him." She looked up, startled, her eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie. Not again. Please, just don't." Her eyes welled instantly, as if she'd been braced for this moment to crumple once more. "I didn't plan to. He offered me a ride. I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing." "Did you go to his place?" She didn't answer. That chilling silence was all the answer I needed. And in that precise instant, something within me hardened. Not with cruelty, not with violent rage, but with a profound, unyielding finality. "I'm not angry," I said, my voice flat. "But we're done pretending this can be fixed." She didn't cry this time. She just sat there, staring down at her folded hands, as if she already knew the ending had been meticulously scripted. In just 7 days, your entire perception of commitment will shatter. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack a dramatic suitcase overflowing with a lifetime of resentment. I didn't even ask her to leave. I simply opened my laptop and began searching for short-term rentals online. My chilling silence, I think, terrified her more than any shouted accusation ever could have. She hovered near the hallway, a wraith trapped between floors, watching as I typed, my gaze fixed on the screen. Every so often she'd try to speak, but the words invariably disintegrated before they could leave her lips. I believe, deep down, she understood. The damage wasn't merely done. It was utterly complete. I found a rental across town, a small, furnished apartment, temporary. I didn't just need space to breathe. I needed space to finally stop suffocating. When I returned to the bedroom to gather a few essentials, she followed me in. "Leander, please," she pleaded, her voice fracturing in ways I'd never heard before. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. He wasn't supposed to mean anything. I got lost. I didn't think you still cared." That line struck me with a force greater than anything else she'd said. I didn't think you still cared. As if the quiet ways I had shown my love, the morning coffee brewed just right, the gentle hand resting on her back as she drifted to sleep, the ever-present glass of water on her nightstand, somehow translated into indifference. As if care only registered when it was loud, flashy, and performative. I zipped up my overnight bag slowly. That's the thing, Briar. I did care. But I grew tired of speaking in his silence, of watching you subtly check out of our life day by day, and then being told I was imagining it all. She started crying again. I ended it. I really did. That night wasn't. You ended it. I interrupted, my voice sharp. Before or after you left with him? She froze. That half-second of stillness was the final, resounding nail. I walked out of the room, but it didn't stop there. A few hours after I settled into the rental, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Leander, I don't know if you know who I am. My name's Thorne. I just thought you deserved to hear it from me." My stomach plummeted. I knew instantly he was the one, the man from the party, the one whose hand had rested on her waist with such casual familiarity. He sent another message. "She told me you were separated, that you had one foot out the door, that you didn't care." I didn't know she was lying until I saw your face at that party. I saw the look in your eyes when I left. I couldn't sleep after that. I didn't mean to be part of this. I stared at the screen, a wave of nausea washing over me. She hadn't just cheated. She had rewritten our entire narrative for him, erased me from the picture, painted herself the long-suffering victim of a loveless marriage so she could play out a fantasy unburdened by guilt. He texted again. I ended it for real. I blocked her. "I'm sorry, man. I should have known." I didn't reply. What was there to say? I wasn't about to thank him for handing me the shattered fragments of a mirror he had helped break. Here's what no one tells you about having your entire past rewritten. The next morning, Briar called. I ignored it. She called again, then a text arrived. "Please just hear me out. I didn't mean to drag him into this. I told him lies because I didn't know how to tell myself the truth. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please let me talk to you." I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. Not because I was tempted to reply, but because a crucial realization dawned on me. She had only begun to speak the truth Once every single one of her lies had already crumbled around her. I didn't want to meet her. Every fiber of my being screamed against it. But curiosity, a cruel master, doesn't whisper. And something deep within me yearned to hear her say it. Not through text, not in a tearful voicemail, but calmly, soberly, devoid of all theatrics. So, I agreed to meet her. Neutral Ground, a quiet, unassuming cafe on Jefferson Street that used to be our sacred Sunday morning ritual spot. Back when life felt simpler and a perfectly crafted Eggs Benedict held the power to mend almost anything. When I arrived, she was already seated. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but diminished, as if she had visibly deflated under the crushing weight of her own choices. She offered no smile. She didn't reach for my hand. Good. At least she had finally read the room. We ordered. I barely registered what I asked for, and I certainly didn't taste it. A profound silence stretched between us, a chasm that had nothing to do with mere awkwardness. It was a dense accumulation of history, tension, and simmering resentment, all colliding in that confined space. I know I don't deserve this, she began, her voice fragile. But thank you for coming. I offered no response. She nodded, accepting my silence. Then she spoke the words that would deepen the wound. I've been seeing him for almost 6 months, not 3. I blinked, not in surprise, but because even now, even here, she had initially tried to soften the blow. She'd cleaved the truth in half, as if the duration of the deception would somehow make it easier for me to swallow. Why do we always try to minimize the pain we inflict? I didn't mean for it to happen, she continued, her gaze fixed on the tabletop. I met him at a client pitch. He was charming. He listened. He remembered things I said, and it felt good to be seen. I felt invisible at home, Leander. I didn't know how to talk to you without feeling like I was bothering you. I could feel the sting of her words, a raw ache beneath my stoic exterior. Yet, I didn't flinch because on some fundamental level, I knew she was telling a partial truth. I had been withdrawn. I had stopped asking certain questions. But not because I had stopped caring. It was because every time I had reached out, she had pulled away, and I had simply grown weary of chasing someone who always seemed to have one foot perpetually outside the door. So you told him we were separated? I asked, finally meeting her eyes. Her lips trembled. Yes. Did you believe that? Or did you just want to? She didn't answer, and that unspoken truth told me everything. I told myself, she whispered, that it wasn't really cheating if we were already broken. But we weren't broken. I countered, my voice low and firm. You just decided we were, and then you made it true. That heavy silence returned. Only now, it was even more suffocating. She wiped a solitary tear, but she didn't sob. No drama. Just the brutal weight of reality finally sinking in. I ended it after the party, she said, her voice barely audible. After I saw your face, after I finally realized what I'd done. You ended it. I repeated, my tone neutral. After you got caught. She nodded. No excuses this time. We sat there for a long while, sipping coffee that had long since grown cold. Do you want a divorce? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer immediately. I honestly wasn't sure. Not yet. I wasn't clinging to hope, but rather trying to untangle whether there was anything left worth salvaging from the wreckage. I don't know, I said finally, but I know I can't come back home right now. I need to feel like I exist again, like I'm not just a background character in your story. She didn't fight it. She simply nodded. And in that moment, I caught a glimpse of the woman I had married. Not the one who lied. Not the one who reached for another man in the dark, but the one who used to hold my hand under tables and leave post-it notes on the bathroom mirror. But that version of her was buried deep, and I didn't know if I had the strength or the desire to go digging. What would you do if the one person you loved became a stranger you barely recognized? 2 weeks passed. I didn't go back to the house. She didn't call again. Not once. Perhaps she was giving me space. Or perhaps she knew that any call would only confirm the silence between us was permanent. Either way, I needed the distance. I needed to sit with myself and truly listen to the thoughts I'd spent years muting for the sake of a version of marriage that no longer, if it ever did, existed. But there was still one thing I hadn't done. Pick up the rest of my belongings. I'd only taken the absolute essentials when I moved into the rental, just enough to get by, assuming I'd either return or finalize everything. As the days stretched on, however, I began to realize that those non-essentials were truly just reminders of who I used to be before I stopped recognizing myself. So, I went back not to talk but simply to gather. She wasn't home. Good. I didn't want to navigate another tear-streaked apology or a "do you want to stay for coffee?" sort of trap. I parked in the driveway like a stranger. I unlocked the door like a thief. Everything was unnervingly quiet. The kind of artificial quiet that suggested she'd cleaned in a panic frenzy, just in case I showed up. I walked past the living room, past the kitchen, and descended into the basement where we kept all the old storage boxes, photo albums, forgotten keepsakes, college junk we'd never quite managed to throw out. I was only down there to retrieve my old guitar, a few binders of my early writing, and maybe a couple of shirts I still cared about. But then I saw it. A plain, unmarked gray shoebox, shoved behind a stack of bulky winter coats in the farthest corner. It wasn't mine. I knew every box I'd ever packed. This one was meticulously sealed with strips of duct tape, and a length of faded red string was haphazardly wrapped around it, as if it had been hastily tied and then forgotten. I should have left it, but I didn't. Here's what no one tells you about unpacking a past you thought you knew. Inside were letters, dozens of them, some folded with care, others hastily crumpled as if she'd tried to discard them, but couldn't quite bring herself to do it. They weren't from Thorn. That much was immediately clear. These were older, their edges yellowed with time. Some were dated as far back as 2 years ago, all from another man. The handwriting, initially precise, grew sloppier over time, then emotionally charged, unmistakably romantic. Mentions of secret meetups, of hotels during work trips, of love, actual, visceral love. The letters often framed me, Leander, as the villain. The boring, cold, unambitious husband she was unhappily stuck with. Suddenly, Thorn wasn't the core betrayal. He was merely a symptom. The insidious disease had been festering for far longer than I had ever dared to imagine. I carefully placed the letters back inside, closing the box slowly, and sat in stunned silence on the cold basement floor, the cement biting through my jeans. Everything finally made terrible sense now. The growing emotional distance, the seemingly inexplicable fights. She'd picked over nothing, the constant somethings to do, that took her away for hours. I believed the affair with Thorn had merely cracked the surface of our marriage. But the surface, I now realized, had been rotting from within all along. When I finally stood, I didn't take the guitar. I didn't grab shirts. I walked out empty-handed, my keys clenched so tightly in my fist that they left angry red marks on my skin. Outside, the sky was a heavy, bruised gray. It hadn't started raining yet, but the oppressive weight of the air told me it would. And for the first time in weeks, I hoped it would. I desperately needed something to break. This discovery didn't just break my heart. It incinerated my reality. Could yours be next? I didn't sleep the night I found those letters. I lay on the cheap mattress in the rental, the ceiling fan whirring above me like a slow, ticking bomb, reading and rereading those devastating pages in my mind until the words blurred and burned behind my eyelids. I wasn't just betrayed. I'd been living inside a meticulously constructed lie with endless, insidious layers. And somewhere within those layers was a version of Briar I had never even gotten the chance to meet. The one who gave herself away to someone else while I was still tucking her into bed at night with a gentle kiss on her forehead. The next morning, driven by a reckless, urgent need for answers, I did something impulsive. I searched for him. Caleb, the name from the letters, a name she had never once uttered to me in all our years together. I started with her professional network, scanning through old connections, past clients, former coworkers on an online platform. It didn't take long. One Caleb Wright, mid-40s, marketing executive, lived just one town over. I recognized his self-satisfied face from a conference photo I vaguely remembered seeing on Briar's old phone background. I recalled asking who he was. She'd said, "Just some client, arrogant but harmless." Harmless, right? In just 15 minutes, a name from the past rewrote 2 years of my life. I found his office address, drove there without a second thought, and parked across the street like some amateur private investigator. I don't know what I expected. An apology? A confrontation? Perhaps I just needed to see, with my own eyes, the kind of man she had risked everything for, twice. He emerged around noon, alone, dressed impeccably for a Wednesday. He walked with a kind of ingrained self-importance that made my fists clench, but I waited. I wanted this moment to be mine. I crossed the street and deliberately placed myself in his path. "Caleb," I said, my voice steady. He paused, blinking at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "Do I know you? I'm Leander, Briar's husband." His face shifted, not to panic, but to a slow, dawning recognition, followed by a subtle, guilt-soaked intake of breath. "Look," he said, holding up a placating hand. "I haven't spoken to her in over a year. If she didn't tell you about me, that's not on me." "She didn't," I said, my voice flat. "But I found the letters." That silenced him completely. He glanced around, as if we might be overheard, then gestured toward a nearby park bench. We sat, two strangers bound by a grotesque, twisted shared history. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he began, his voice low. He claimed it started during a business trip. Drinks after a conference turned into something more. "She said things weren't good between you. She cried the first time. Said she didn't know how to leave you." My jaw tightened. "She said that a lot, apparently. She told me she ended it because she was going to try to fix things with you." I believed her, but then she texted a few months later and it started again. I asked her if she was really done with you. She said it was complicated. That word, complicated. The very same one she used when she stopped wearing her wedding ring because it felt uncomfortable. The same word when she accidentally missed our anniversary dinner due to a complicated work deadline. Caleb leaned forward slightly. "I'm not proud of what happened, but she never made it sound like you were actively in the picture. At least not in a way I should have respected. I know that doesn't make it better." "No," I said, my voice hoarse, "it doesn't. But at least now I know I wasn't just imagining the distance." She'd already left me. She just hadn't bothered to tell me. I stood up. "For what it's worth," he added, his eyes meeting mine, "I think you deserve better." I didn't respond. I just walked back to my car, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm, my stomach hollow. I had come looking for closure, but all I got was confirmation. And, somehow, that was infinitely worse. The truth, they say, sets you free. But what if it just leaves you hollow? I didn't tell her I was coming. I wanted to deny her the luxury of preparing a carefully crafted speech or rehearsing a mask of contrition. I simply showed up. It was early evening, the sun low enough to cast an amber glow across the front steps of our home. The same steps where we used to sit, coffee in hand, discussing all the trivial matters that made up our world. That version of us was long gone. But I owed it to both of us to end this without a slammed door or a silent, agonizing fade-out. She opened the door, startled, yet not entirely surprised. Perhaps she had been anticipating this final confrontation. "I won't stay long," I stated, my voice calm and clear. She stepped aside, and I walked into the living room like a guest, not a husband. There was a cardboard box on the coffee table. My old journals, a forgotten hoodie, a framed photo of us from New Orleans, the glass cracked in one corner but still standing. "I didn't know if you wanted them," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded. "Thanks." Then I sat down, not because I needed to talk, but because I needed her to truly hear me. I'm not here to yell or to pick apart the past. I've done that enough times in my head to fill an entire novel. I'm here because I need to say something, and I need you to actually listen. Not defend, not explain, just listen. She sat opposite me, folded her hands in her lap, and nodded once. "I loved you, Briar, and I think some part of me still does. But not in the way I used to. Not with hope, not with a future in mind. I love the person I thought you were. The woman who danced in our kitchen barefoot. The woman who left little notes in my lunch bag just to say you got this. But somewhere along the way, that version of you stopped showing up, and I kept trying to carry the weight for both of us." She looked down, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, but I didn't stop. I know I wasn't perfect. I pulled away too. I stopped asking questions because I grew tired of hearing half answers. But I didn't deserve to be rewritten. I didn't deserve to become your convenient excuse for doing whatever you wanted. She whispered, "I know. I believe you're sorry," I said. "But that doesn't mean I owe you another chance. Forgiveness isn't permission to stay. It's permission to go." With that, I stood. She followed me to the door, but made no attempt to stop me. As I stepped outside, I turned back one last time. "Take care of yourself, Briar. I hope you figure out who you are when no one else is watching." She nodded, tears streaming freely now. I walked to my car and drove off. No rear-view glances, no melancholic parting music swelling in the background. Just peace. A quiet, honest, profound peace. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Free. In the end, freedom arrived not with a bang, but with a whisper. What's one decision you made that radically changed the course of your life, even if no one else saw it coming?